The federal government is under pressure on potential negative gearing changes and energy rebates. The Reserve Bank warns on AI, and the Star Group finally gets a $200 million financial package and then gets hit with a $60 million tax bill. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news. For people who make their own decisions, it is Friday, the 27th of September, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was yesterday fighting hard to deflect the debate about changes to negative gearing or capital gains tax after it emerged that the government had requested modelling from Treasury.
Mr Albanese said he wasn't sure who had made the request and he has no plans to make changes, though, as analysts pointed out, his words were very similar to those used 12 months ago about the Stage 3 tax cuts. Back then he promised no changes to the tax cuts, but ultimately the government did alter how those tax cuts were implemented. Negative gearing, as it pertains to housing, allows property investors to deduct losses from running their rental properties against their personal income. When they sell the property, the same owners benefit from the capital gains tax discount. The story was in 9 newspapers on Wednesday. It's running really hard at the moment. Opposition leader Peter Dutton gave what he called an absolute guarantee not to change negative gearing. He said it doesn't pass the pub test. Greens housing spokesman Max Chandler-Mather repeated calls for the Labor government to negotiate with his party over negative gearing, saying the Greens don't expect to get everything that they want. That's exactly what the government doesn't want to be hearing. The fact that the Greens want to negotiate with him, that gives Peter Dutton a lot more ammunition. We're going to hear a lot about this one in lead up to the election. While it might be good policy, it is political dynamite because 2.3 million Australians own an investment home and about $48 billion in rental deductions are claimed every year.
I just enjoy the idea of the Prime Minister saying he wasn't sure who made the request. It does feel a little bit like kind of plausible deniability there and just like fingers in ears. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. It'll be very interesting to see how that one plays out. Now, the federal government, while we're on this topic, Sean, is also under pressure to extend billions of dollars in energy subsidies into next year to prevent a surge in cost for consumers.
Okay, so Treasurer Jim Chalmers was very happy this week about the headline inflation rate in the June quarter falling to 2.7%. But unless the subsidies are kept, well, out-of-pocket electricity costs are going to rise sharply when they end. In fact, one estimate is 47% next year. That is not something that the government wants to see. Now, the drop in the headline rate of inflation reflected federal government energy rebates and state grants in Queensland and Western Australia. Dr. Chalmers said there was nothing artificial about helping people with their power bills, true, but it definitely artificially cut inflation. And underlying inflation, the measure that the Reserve Bank likes, is still at 3.4%, way above the Reserve Bank's 2 to 3% target range. So now there's all sorts of pressure on the federal government to extend the billions of dollars in energy subsidies so that we don't get a big hike in inflation next year.
All right, let's take a look at local markets. How did they perform yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 rose 1% to 8,204 points, led higher by news that Beijing will implement steps to boost the Chinese economy. That helped the big miners, with Fortescue Metals Group up 3% and BHP in Rio Tinto rising around 2%. Iron ore futures jumped towards $97 a tonne. Consumer discretionary stocks also did well. Wesfarmers was up 1.5%. Aristocrat Leisure and JB Hi-Fi both rose 3%. A fall in oil prices hurt Woodside and Santos. Both were among the worst performers on the ASX 200 yesterday. The big banks were mixed, while REA and WiseTech Global surged. Plenty of corporate stuff going on, Michael. The competition watchdog has given clearance to Lend-Lease's $1.3 billion sale of 12 residential master-planned community projects to Stockland and a Thai-owned group. REA Group struck a deal to acquire a 19.9% interest in digital non-bank lender Athena Home for $62 million. Platinum Asset Management rejected a takeover bid from Regal Partners, saying the deal undervalues Platinum. The implied bid price of $1.10 a share was about a 10% premium to Platinum's previous closing price before the bid was made. The statement from Platinum yesterday, though, it certainly opens further bids going forward. In fact, it said it's still open to another bid. Alinta Energy, the country's fourth largest electricity and gas retailer and Japan's largest power generation company, JERA, have been awarded a license to develop an offshore wind project that could power Alcoa's Portland aluminium smelter. And not in the listed space, but interesting all the same, Gold Coast airport owner Queensland Airports has been bought by private equity groups KKR, Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, and Skip Capital for about $3 billion. Aussie Super was considered favourite to buy the business, but the US-based groups won out.
It's a very big 24 hours, right?
There's just so much going on. Kind of not like the hands down big corporate story, but just lots of other stuff happening.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on. Checking international markets now, thanks to Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au, and globally, it's really all about China, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. Beijing yesterday stepped in to resurrect the world's second largest economy, with President Xi Jinping and China's top leaders calling for sufficient fiscal spending, measures to stabilise the property sector, and, as they put it, forceful rate cuts. The 24-man Politburo promised to complete the country's annual economic goals. That is 5% growth this year. And China will also push for the real estate market to stop declining in what appears to be the most forceful vow yet to stem the free fall in the property market and try to stabilise prices. The news helped commodity prices across the board, also helped the Aussie dollar, which is trading just under 69 US cents. Global equity markets also rallied on the news, with the Shanghai index jumping more than 3%.
Just a quick mention of your interview that you've got coming up after the show today, Sean, something a little bit different. You're speaking with Kayla Dengate from LinkedIn.
It's really fascinating. So LinkedIn, a company with plenty of data, it knows the sorts of jobs people are looking for. It rates the top 20 startup companies as per activity, LinkedIn activity around those companies. Now, a big part of that is people wanting to go and work for those companies. And we run through some of them, and fascinating, some of them. I mean, my personal favourite are the death tech companies, the companies that are all about preparing people, or sort of planning before they pass on. But there's a bunch of really fascinating companies in there. We talk about who they are, what they want from applicants, what applicants want from them. It's a great chat with Kayla.
Yeah, and talking about lab-grown meat and hypersonic rockets and things like It's just, really, really interesting stuff. So well worth a listen. It's coming up after the show. Sean, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the Reserve Bank has warned that the digital economy, including AI, surging global equity markets, and the weak economy in China all pose threats to Australia's financial stability.
The central bank yesterday released its financial stability report, and it nominated 3 vulnerabilities with the potential to significantly impact Australia. One is the digital economy, including artificial intelligence, which has made things increasingly complex and interconnected. While it leads to speed and efficiency, there's a downside. It means there's more risk if a major player goes wrong. So we all rely on a third party, and if something goes wrong there, well, that actually hits more of us. We saw that with these CrowdStrike problems a few months ago. The Reserve Bank also worried about the low-risk premia. That's how they put it, low-risk premia in equity and credit markets. That really is about the fact that those markets are pretty strong at the moment, and maybe that risk-reward spectrum isn't working quite as well as it should. Also worried about the imbalance in China's financial sector. Overall, in Australia, the share of borrowers experiencing severe financial stress remains manageable. There's a growing number of people falling behind on mortgage payments, but it remains pretty small, according to the Reserve Bank. While businesses are generally healthy, managing cash flow is becoming a problem. Most of the pressure is on the smaller end of the market. Some of the pressures are expected to ease in coming months, so the economic outlook remains very uncertain.
I mentioned Star Entertainment Group at the top of the show, Sean. The group has secured a $200 million financial rescue package, though the new management has plenty of work to do to make the business viable in the long term.
Yes, so corporate lenders have agreed to a new debt facility in 2 tranches of $100 million each. The first will be available, subject to conditions, from next month, and the interest rate on the loan is 13.5%, way above commercial rates. Now, that clearly demonstrates how risky the loan is, at least according to the lenders. Over the past month, plenty going on with this company. A second New South Wales Independent Casino Commission inquiry by barrister Adam Bell SC found that the group was continuing to fail the standards required of a casino operator. It failed to rule off its 2024 financial accounts. And it's also, we found out yesterday, failed to do a deal with the Queensland government over tax relief, with the Miles government saying it won't continue negotiations with the Star. The state had been expected to defer the payment of some $60 million in tax. The Star's just been landed with that $60 million tax bill.
Yeah, ouch. And Star finally released its financial year accounts after striking that financial deal.
Yes, only 26 days late, Michael, not too bad.
Who's counting?
It devalued its assets by more than $1 billion and said it plans to cut $100 million in costs within 6 months. Overall, for the last financial year, it posted a $1.7 billion loss. Apart from the write-downs, the amount of revenue from its casinos across Sydney, Brisbane and the Gold Coast had deteriorated at a time when operating and remediation costs had risen. Everything going against the Star at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. Now, Sean, if you walked up to any regular Joe in the street and said, what do you reckon Brickworks does? Do you reckon they would get it right?
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
You would hope so, because Brickworks is the country's largest brickmaker. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Anyway, that's the intro to the next story, because Brickworks has announced its first loss in decades after writing down its property portfolio and building products business.
So I suppose the point here is that Brickworks does more than make bricks.
Oh, you had to complicate things, didn't you, Sean? Here I was satisfied at last that Brickworks, which makes bricks, is named after exactly what it does. And you just had to go, no, it actually does other things as well.
I'd say Brickworks. And the main thing, Austell bricks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I reckon that's the main business. That'll do.
If you make bricks, put the word bricks in your company name. Done.
That's right. Now, first, net loss. But the good news is that the underlying profit hit expectations. And in fact, Brickworks upped its dividend paid out. Still, the company made a full year loss of $119 million compared to a $395 million profit the previous year. Brickworks also has investments in other companies, including Washington H. Soul Pattinson, the core brick business in Australia and North America. Michael, you'll be happy to know, upped earnings. But Chief Executive Mark Eleanor said the housing market isn't likely to improve significantly over the next 12 months. Brickworks' share price jumped 7% yesterday. Investors liked what they heard.
You mentioned Washington H. Soul Pattinson, one of Brickworks' major shareholders. It said its net profit fell 28% for its financial year.
Yes, well, that reflects Brickworks' lack of contribution to earnings, given it made a loss. Washington Soul Pats is an old-style conglomerate. It's got stakes in New Hope, TPG Telecom, Pengana Capital, along with Brickworks. But its net profit last year fell sharply because of that stake in Brickworks.
Mosaic Brands, the struggling women's retail group behind Katie's, Noni B, Rivers and more, is hoping to stave off financial collapse by asking global suppliers to accept terms where they'll be paid as little as 1/3 of what they're owed.
Mosaic Brands Chief Executive Erica Berchtold and the company's Chief Financial Officer, David Clark, have engaged in negotiations with suppliers from China, India and Bangladesh. They're owed tens of millions of dollars. Those negotiations have been going on over the past month, with some suppliers asked to accept reduced payment terms, according to a story in the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. In most cases, Mosaic Brands, which also operates Rockmans and Millers, has sold the garments received from the suppliers and banked the proceeds without paying for them. Mosaic Brands, which employs 4,000 staff, has about 700 stores, a very large specialty fashion retailer in this country, failed to lodge its financial accounts last month with the ASX. Its shares are suspended. The overseeing body in Bangladesh has complained about the fact that it hasn't paid its bills.
How about this one, Sean? Two fierce competitors could end up as tablemates, with the ACCC looking into whether it should allow Sanitarium, the owner of Weet-Bix, to buy the Vitabrits brand, intellectual property and goodwill from Nestle Australia.
We are Weet-Bix or a Vitabrits family. It's a very big thing in my childhood. We were purely a Vitabrits family.
Oh, really? Oh, no, no,
You're
no, no, no. We are Wheat Bix. We were
all right.
Wheat Bix. We still are Wheat Bix. I have Wheat Bix every morning for breakfast. I'm
Really?
old school. Yeah.
Do you have sugar on them?
I have, Sean, I have Wheat Bix, and then I
Mm.
have yogurt, and then I have whatever fruit on top. It might be banana. Sometimes it's pear. I slice up a pear. Sometimes, if I'm feeling particularly fancy, it will be an assortment of berries.
Not a lot of taste in either Vitabrits or Wheat Bix.
Oh, but I just add the flavor. And sometimes, as we head into summer, I'll actually put grapes on it. Cut up grapes.
Really?
Yeah, it's like it's summer in a bowl, Sean.
Summer in a bowl. The competition watchdog is deciding whether a merger of the two would lead to higher prices or a hit to quality. Ironic, a hit to quality. Both are among leading cereal brands across the country. Sanitarium produces and supplies Wheat Bix. And Michael, in a shock to me, it actually, Sanitarium makes Wheat Bix. It also makes Vitabrits for Nestle. I was so disappointed when I heard that. Australian Health and Nutrition Association Limited, which trades as Sanitarium, is a registered not-for-profit organisation wholly owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Its Wheat Bix brand, which were first sold 98 years ago, is the leading wheat biscuit brand in Australia. Michael, so while I like Vitabrits, you are in the majority.
And rightly so. Did you know, Sean, and I noticed this yesterday and I commented on it to Shan, which probably tells you we have very dull conversations in our household. I was opening a new box of Wheat Bix yesterday morning, and I remarked on the fact to her that after all these years, Sanitarium, Wheat Bix, the packages are still not actually sealed. Like, because once you open the box, the bag inside is never actually sealed. It's just folded over.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, which tell you, like, because, you know, every other cereal brand, you've then got to kind of snip the top off if you're getting Nutri-Grain or anything like that.
And you rip it the wrong way, and so you got the whole, 3 weeks worth of cereal falling out the wrong way. Yeah.
Indeed. And Wheat Bix, it is just a folded over bag, which tells you something about the shelf life of these things and just about how you could actually probably pass pass Wheat Bix on to kind of brickworks for use in construction, because these things are unbeatable. Like, if they can survive being exposed to just air inside their boxes for months and months and months on end without going stale, I reckon.
Maybe they're not real good when they get wet. They're probably not going to hold much up when they get wet.
Anyway, goodness me.
International news.
Gosh, take a moment there. International news time, and a change of pace now, Sean. A very serious story. The US and France have led international calls for a 21-day ceasefire between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. It came hours after an Israeli military chief told troops to prepare for a potential ground offensive in Lebanon.
The initiative, backed by the G7, EU, 3 Arab nations and Australia, called for a swift endorsement of the truce in a statement issued on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. According to the Financial Times, one senior US administration official said a temporary ceasefire could shake things up and create space for a long-term resolution to the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, while helping avert the threat of a wider regional war. The Biden administration described the initiative as a significant breakthrough.
And finally, Sean, Google has filed a formal complaint against Microsoft with the European Union's top antitrust regulator, escalating a long-running dispute over the cloud computing business.
Yeah, it's a bit of an irony in this one. In the complaint, the search giant accuses Microsoft of abusing its market power in enterprise software to push businesses to use its Azure cloud platform and to keep them locked in there. The antitrust complaint is a turnaround for Google, which nearly 2 decades ago became a sustained target of EU antitrust action, in part stemming from complaints supported by Microsoft. This is all according to the Wall Street Journal. The two companies for a time made peace, but the accord has unravelled recently. Microsoft said it had settled similar concerns with European cloud providers and expected that Google's complaint would fail to persuade the European Commission. Don't you love it when these big tech platforms take on each other? Particularly over antitrust stuff, on competition stuff.
God, it's just, what do they call that? A lawyer's picnic, isn't it?
You'd think so.
Oh, extraordinary. Now, Sean, we've had a few Mia mugs heading out the door lately.
We have.
Mia is our most enthusiastic advocate, and the mugs are a symbol of our appreciation for those people who have helped to spread the word about Fear and Greed. And I've got to say, they are a prized possession indeed. These are rare. They are limited edition, only because we only ordered a certain number of them. And those who are receiving them are very lucky indeed.
Look, I have a special person, or I have a special nomination for a person, Henrietta. She knows exactly who she is. Now, I knew Henrietta from many years ago as a journalist, and I reckon within the first week of Fear and Greed going to air, she got in touch with me and she said, Sean, that is fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. She still, 4 years, 4 months later, still listens to us every day. And the other day she messaged me and said, I've been listening to you forever, and other people are getting Mia mugs. And I actually thought, she has been pushing our praises for a long, long time. So Henrietta, thank you very much for everything you've done. And you certainly have a Mia mug on the way.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like we have kind of corrected an injustice here.
That's exactly right. I actually think Henrietta was the first person that ever got in touch with me after we put the podcast out to say well done.
That kind of early feedback.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It makes an awful lot of difference. So
Any
thank you.
feedback, not just the early feedback, all the feedback.
Yeah, all
like.
feedback. We do actually love hearing from people.
Most of it.
And we are now bribing people with Mia
right.
mugs for that feedback, particularly praise. So, Henrietta, thank you very much for listening, and a Mia mug is on its way to you. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. Kayla Dengate from LinkedIn is your guest.
Yes, all about the most popular or the best startups as per the way LinkedIn ranks them, which is, it's based on people wanting to work for these companies. I suppose that's how you'd put it. But it's a fascinating chat about rocket companies and death tech and meat substitutes and stuff like that.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 27th of September, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast, and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.